Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting for October 21st, 2002 of the Haltom City Council is called to order. Our first item on the agenda tonight is our invocation and pledge of allegiance to be led by Councilmember John Williams. Will you stand for this, please?
Let's bow in prayer, please. Father, Lord, we thank you for this day that you have given us, Lord. We thank you for the many blessings you bestow upon us. We pray, Lord, as we go through this meeting, Lord, pray that you'll give the members of this council the wisdom and the knowledge to lead Haltom City to the next step. Lord, we pray for those that are back up in the Washington area, those that are grieving family members who have been shot, Lord. We pray that you'll bestow safety amongst them. We pray, Lord, as we each go our separate ways tonight, that you'll give us a safe trip home. We ask these things in thy name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Henderson, your light is on. Okay. Well, we welcome all of you here tonight who are present in the council chambers, as well as those who are watching on HCTV. We do broadcast our meetings live, as well as we replay them at various times. So whether you're watching live tonight, if you're watching at home, or if you're watching a replay, welcome to this meeting of the Haltom City Council as you see your elected officials in action to address the business of the city. We are very pleased to introduce the lady to my immediate right. This is the new city secretary for the city of Haltom City. Her name is Brenda Staub, and on item 8 of the agenda, in just a moment, we will ratify her appointment to this position. She's been on the job since Tuesday of last week, and this is her first council meeting here in Haltom City. She comes to us from the city of Bedford. She was over there for 6 or 7 years, and she comes with very high recommendations from the people she has worked with. So I wanted to introduce her to you, and I know you'll join with me in welcoming her to Haltom City to be a part of our leadership team here in Haltom City. And with that, Ms. Staub, would you like to address the citizens at this time?
I would like to tell the council and the mayor, thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And I look forward to working with every citizen here in Haltom City. It's going to be quite a challenge, and it's a great city. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I'd like to give each member of the council, if they would, an opportunity to say anything you would like to regarding this appointment of Ms. Staub as our secretary. And I will begin. Normally we start with position 1, but Dewey said last time, by the time it gets to him, he never has anything to say. It's already been said. So we're going to start at position 7, and we'll come in descending order. And after we have welcomed Brenda, we have a few things to say to Donna, who's done such a good job. But we'll take care of that in a moment. Right now, the spotlight is on our new city secretary, Brenda Staub.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to welcome Brenda to our fair city. She accepted the job wholeheartedly. She has gone full blast in accepting her responsibilities and her obligations. She's a breath of fresh air. She's ready to go, and she's ready to do a good job for this city. I think the second day on the job, she called me at home, and I was busy doing something. I called her back, and she said, I called her number back, and she picked up the phone. She said, "This is Brenda, City of Bedford." I said, "This is Brenda. What city are you in?" She said, "Oh, this is Haltom City." So we had a good laugh, but we welcome her aboard, and I look forward to many years of a good working relationship. With that, Let me just say a few things in regards to Donna. If I
I will come back for a second round,
Okay,
make
thank you.
comments regarding Donna. Councilmember Hurley?
Well, I'd like to echo what Dewey said about Brenda, because she has worked for some 6 or 7 years in close connection with a person I have known for a bunch of years, and she's a career city employee. And I think Brenda demonstrates the talent and the ability of being a career employee herself of a high caliber. I'd like to wish her well.
Councilmember Avery?
Just to reiterate what's already been said, Brenda has came from the city of Bedford, very highly recommended, and I'm looking forward to working with you, and I wish you well.
And we'll just continue right on down the line. I said what I had to say a moment ago. So with that, Mr. Torres?
Truly, on behalf of myself and all the staff, we're very glad to have you. Instantaneously, we knew that you were going to fit into this group, and you got the right personality and the right work ethic, and we're glad to have you part of our team.
Councilmember Fowler?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess Ms. Stott was a little bit excited at her first interview. When she came back for her second one, she really highly impressed us, even more so than the first. I think as the citizens get an opportunity to work with her, they'll realize that she is very aggressive, and she's very straightforward, very aggressive, and I believe she's the type person or individual that's going to do everything she can to help any of the citizens as well as the council. So I feel like we're very blessed to have her and look forward to working with her.
Councilmember Williams?
Thank you. I was real impressed that we interviewed Miss Staub, and she came back for a second interview after we invited her back after she met all of us. We met her first on a Saturday morning, and we're not really real good to look at on Saturday morning. And our questions were a little tough. And then we called her back in for a second interview, and far more impressed the second time when I met her, and she's impressed me quite well since then. We did figure her salary, and if y'all catch her saying absolutely, we take $100 off of her salary every time she says absolutely. She is that positive. Anytime you ask her to do something, it's absolutely, we're going to get it done. And I like that in a person. She's upbeat. Like Dewey said, she's already started calling us at work. She's found out all my numbers. She knows how to track me down. Second conversation I had with her, she wanted my credit card number. It was for city business. I was a little relieved after I found out that, but it's nice to have somebody that's got the experience, familiar with the job that she's doing. I think she's really impressed everyone since she's been here, the way she's took charge. And we're looking forward to many happy years of working together with you. So good luck.
Councilmember Henderson?
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to welcome you and look forward to working with you for many years to come. And I'm excited about the energy you bring to the City Secretary's position. And again, just welcome to Haltom City.
And Councilmember Jennings?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd just like to say when you go last, everybody's already said everything. So. Seriously, Brenda, we're very happy to have you here. I think everybody out there knows that there are two different types of personalities in the world. There's the A personalities and the B personalities. Brenda is a capital A type personality. She's one notch higher than an A person. She's just constantly on top of everything, and I think if you could describe her work ethic with one word, it just have to be professional. She exudes professionalism in everything she does. I think that this council will be remembered for two of the best hires that the city of Haltom City has done in quite some time, and I think our city manager and our city secretary are going to reflect that, and I'm proud to be part of having Brenda come to Haltom City.
Thank you, gentlemen. And Ms. Staub, I think you can tell by what we have just said, we're pleased to have you, and that is an understatement. We're delighted to have you as our city secretary. In the interim, we have had a lady step up and do a tremendous job for us, and we owe her a great debt of gratitude. And I'll wait until my turn to make my comments, and we'll again start with Councilmember Markham. Comments regarding Donna Bernard and the work she's done.
Thank you, Mayor. Donna has been an employee of this city. I I really don't know how many years, to be quite honest with you. 2 years? Not as long as I thought. But when our city secretary resigned, Donna stepped up to the plate. She was the only one to step up to the plate. And she handled the job with the utmost sincerity, dedication, and resolve. She done the work of 2 people. Every time I called her for something, she was upbeat. She is ready to do whatever the job called for. And this council, this mayor, this city owes you a big debt of gratitude, and I thank you very much.
Donna, the only bad thing is you're leaving the job of city secretary, but the good thing is that you're staying here and you'll be a lot of help to Brenda. And I think you've done an outstanding job as interim city secretary. Congratulations.
Donna, I too think you've done an outstanding job as city secretary. You've been here for a couple of years, no more experience than you've had in that job. Every time I needed something or any other member of this body needed something, you always made that your top priority and handled everything in a very expeditious manner, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Ms. Staub, anything you'd like to say regarding this lady you've worked with for 1 week? You've had an opportunity to see her in action.
The citizens are very, very lucky to have Donna. I'm very fortunate to work with Donna. She and I are going to work great together. We're going to do great things with the city council, the city, and the mayor. She's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. She's kind of taken me under her wing to help me, with the little things that I don't know. And she has done a tremendous job. All records and everything since she took over as interim is perfect.
Donna, I've had an opportunity to be in City Hall nearly every day, coming in, getting mail, talking with you about various issues. And Haltom City is very fortunate to have someone of your caliber that has stepped into the gap during this time period and serve as the interim. You have a very professional, a very thorough approach to things, and a very sweet, neat personality that makes you, when people come in your office, they feel very good. And I always appreciated that about you. In the event some of you don't know, Donna is working on her certification as a city secretary. She's got a few more courses to take, but she's working on it, and she's learning everything she can. And I know she'll be a great help to you and to all of us. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for what you have done for Haltom City and for me and for the staff and for the council over these last few months. You did do the work of 2 people, and you did it well.
First class job, truly. One of the things that I think is very important for us all to do is to make sure that every position here with the city has a good backup. And now, over the several months that you had this position, it's very comforting for me to know that in the absence of Brenda in the future, and there'll be times when Brenda needs to go on vacation or just be doing other things, it's good to know you're going to be there. And so, James, you better take good care of her and keep her there, okay? So there's a connect, in case most of you don't know, and it's getting to be a stronger connect between Donna and our city planner. So we have to watch them both kind of close. So. Thanks, guys.
Don, I just want to thank you. You've done the same job that you've done every day. I don't see a difference in. I realize your workload increased, but you took it on the same way that you always do, day in and day out, and I thank you for that. I thank you for the other days prior to this for the hard work that you've done. That's, a lot of people don't realize that you're not necessarily stepping up. You're just continuing to do the same thing you do every day, and it's great to have employees like that with our city that continue to do things day in and day out properly. I thank you for that.
Well, I think Donna more is a little sister than I do a city secretary. If a person doesn't really know what all the city secretary does, it's not as easy as what one thinks it is. It's just not coming in, taking a few notes and writing a few letters. She has to serve 39,000 plus citizens just like this council does. She has to put up with the different personalities of everybody who works in this building, plus the different personalities that come through the building wanting different requests and things. And Donna has fit in quite well. Like you said, she'd only been here 2 years. I think for somebody that only been here 2 years and step in and do the job that she did a tremendous job. I'm very happy to say that we have Donna working for us. I look very forward to working for her in the future, and I know her and Brenda will get along excellent. There's some things that Donna's done recently that has really impressed me, not only as a secretary, but showing me character. And one of her jobs, not only being the city secretary, is to keep these 8 guys sitting up here behind this deal in line. And she does quite well at that. And so Donna, just, if there's anything that this board can ever do for you, we're here for you, and thank you, and we love you.
Well, Donna, I want to thank you as well. Being next to last, there's not much left to say, but I know that you have been working some extra long hours, because I do come in after hours and see you sitting in your desk quite frequently at 5:30, 6:30 in the evenings, starting to work some hours that the chief planner's working, and I don't know if that's good or not. But seriously, everybody up here appreciates you and what you did, and it's hard to find employees that will fill that role for any amount of time that will take on two positions for one. And again, just thank you for everything you've done, and appreciate the way you've handled that office during your time here.
Well, again, they've said it all, except when I first met Donna struck me as a very shy kind of person, and I still think she's a little bit shy to those people that don't know her. I can truthfully say that in a 2-year period of time, when I first met Donna, I considered her to be one of the employees of the city of Haltom City. Certainly she still is that, but I've also added the word friend to that list. She's become a friend over the past 2 years, and one that I've been very honored to know and to be around. And our city manager alluded to the fact that maybe Donna's got a relationship here that could go to another level. I'd just like to announce to HCTV and everybody involved that our city planner and Donna are officially engaged. And I had to find out about that the hard way. I had to call down here, and that wasn't on the mayor's hotline or anything, because we did away with that. But I was very proud to find that out, because I think a lot of Donna and I think a lot of James both, and I wish you both well, and I'm very, very glad that both of you work for the city of Haltom City and will continue to do so.
Well, Donna, I think you can tell that we appreciate you a whole lot, and we are deeply indebted to you for the work you did. The position of city secretary is tremendously important to the smooth flowing of business at City Hall, and Donna's done a great job, and we do appreciate it. Would you like to address the citizens, say anything? If you would, please go to the podium.
I just want to say to Mayor and Council, thank you for the great opportunity that you gave me, and I enjoy the citizens of Haltom City, and I look forward to being here for many years, and we're having a really great time, Brenda and I. I'm going to learn a lot from her, and you guys made a great pick with her. Thank you.
It may be a little bit later in the meeting that James Pliska may have an item to address on the agenda or not. I don't know. He may not have concentration tonight. His mind may be elsewhere, and he may even like to make a comment if he gets a chance to come to the podium later, if he wants to make any comments about what Councilmember Jennings announced about the engagement. So if you notice, he's beaming. You can see a little extra light back over here. One other item we need to take care of, and thank you for your indulgence over the last few minutes. I think it's very important for us to express appreciation to these two individuals. One other item, Council member David Averett has had an event occur in his family since we met the last time, and it just might be that he would like to tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you, Mayor. On Friday, October 4th, at approximately 11 minutes after 10, my wife and I were blessed with the birth of our first baby boy, Joshua David, weighing in at, 6 pounds, 7 ounces, 19 inches long. And we're both very excited. It's a first for both of us. Thank you.
Mother and son doing okay?
Both doing great.
What about Dad?
Well, very excited, but doing great.
Well, congratulations
Thank
to you and Lisa. Okay, the Pleasant Councilmember Jennings.
I was just wondering about the customary cigars. I haven't received mine.
Oh, I'm sorry. They're after the meeting.
Is he gonna be a sailor?
Possibly.
Okay, we move forward now to our agenda, and the first is a focus, our spotlight, our monthly spotlight we place on one of our boards and commissions, and it's our pleasure this meeting to focus on the Crime Control and Prevention Board. And here to make the presentation is the chairperson of that board, Mr. Tommy Sanderson. Mr. Sanderson, if you'd come forth, and I believe you may have some members of your board with you if you'd like to introduce them.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to say welcome, Brenda. And I know Donna's going to be still there for us, and she's helped me out a lot too. Yes. If the Crime Control and District Board that are present would please stand, would be greatly appreciated. Okay, thank y'all. The Crime Control and District Prevention Board works with all the crime tax funds. And over the last year, with the sales tax being approved and up, we've been able to bring in to help the PD along with the crime prevention with numerous of items. Within the last year, the CCPD has approved the purchase of weapons and for the police officers to be city issued instead of having to provide them themselves, and which is a great expense for a young officer that's starting out. We've purchased numerous of new patrol cars to take some of the other ones and send them on down to other city departments to be used to give us low maintenance and stuff on those patrol cars. In the last year, we put 4 new motorcycles on the street. These are city purchased instead of being leased, which is a great benefit for our traffic division. If y'all have noticed it, being around some of the patrol cars, we have video cameras. This is for protection of the officers and to be used in court if needed for a DWI case or what might come around. The CCPD has purchased those with the crime tax. And each officer is equipped with a mic. We keep them updated with new mics that get damaged and provide them with those needs. And that's where y'all's crime tax from y'all's purchases and stuff all kind of goes towards. In the last year, we've been working on a new report management system that will go into effect. I think it's still staying on January of 2003. It'll be a pretty well in full operation. This was a great new program that it was a great issue to the police department as long as also to some of the fire department vehicles. The patrol cars will be able to write the reports and stuff in their cars and put more cars back on the street at a faster response time, and having maps that will come up on the screen. It's a fantastic program. A lot of the area cities have this program, and we're all excited about this program coming up with it. Dispatchers have already gone through the training, and some of the police officers have started their training on how to operate the new computer system. In the last year, we upgraded from a small little vehicle for our crime scene to a Suburban. A lot of y'all probably have seen it at some of the open house shows. It's white when it sits out in front of the PD. It gives the crime scene a lot more room to carry more stuff on to do his job. And that was purchased with the funds from the CCPD. And over the last several months, with our city, along with a lot of other cities, with the DARE being abolished throughout a lot of the cities, the CCPD was a purchaser of the DARE van. We went back in and changed it, of having it restriped and dressed over to be a crime prevention van for our crime prevention program that we do have here in the city. The crime board does oversee the 2002-2003 budgets of each year that provide a lot of the office needs and supplies, anything from the guns to radios to cameras and everything for the police department. And if y'all ever wonder where your money, your crime tax money goes to, you're more than welcome to come to the meetings. We meet quarterly. You can contact the city secretary when the next meeting is, or the administration at the police department. You're more than welcome to sit in on these meetings. We do encourage it. We like for the citizens to be involved where they know where the sales tax is going that y'all did approve. And I want to say thank y'all and congratulations to Councilman Averett, and thank y'all.
If you will, remain at the podium. Councilmember Jennings and Councilmember Hurley, you're part of the board. Any comments you'd like to make in regard to this overview?
I'd just like to state for the record that the Crime Control and Prevention District is the entity that oversees the tax funds as they are gathered. Each year they do a budget, just like the city council does a budget for the city. They look over all the items that are proposed by the police department, and as a body they recommend to the city council exactly what items are going to be purchased using your tax dollars, what items can be put off, and based on that, I think that the CCPD has been an excellent steward of the city's funds over the past 5 or 6 years. Up until this last year, we have maintained about $250,000 in reserve, due to the fact that if the citizens had failed to re-vote in this tax, we would have had to step down what we were doing for the police department. But based on your support, we've been able to go in and take our budget to that next level. And certainly as things are tight, we've been watching your dollars and cents, but that group of individuals is very good at what they do. I think that the relationship that we have with the police department and the items that we are purchasing, I think each and every one of them are weighed in on their own individual merits, and I feel real good to have been associated with the CCPD since its inception. Having served as the first president of the CCPD, I'm very glad to be associated with it, and all of the people on that board. I just think they're very great people.
I think the Crime Control Prevention District and also the Crime Prevention Board, I think all of the board members do an outstanding job of kind of keeping that pulse of the police department close at hand and knowing exactly what their needs are. They communicate better on a one-to-one basis without a lot of red tape. And a lot of needs are expedited quite promptly through the board. So I think Tommy's done a fine job, and all of the rest of the board members too.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any
Mr.
comment?
Mayor,
Excuse me.
We've overlooked Mr. Markham, who's also on that board.
I didn't see you stand a while ago.
Well, I didn't stand a while ago because I did not hear Mr. Sanderson say stand up.
Okay.
He was
I
just
just
afraid
didn't hear
everything
him.
had already been said.
It usually is by the time it gets me, but the board, Tommy Sanderson and the guys work hand in hand with the citizens. They work hand in hand with the police department, and these guys work hard. I've been there. I've watched them. They do a wonderful job for this city, and we appreciate them very much. Thank you, Tommy.
Thank y'all.
Other members of the council, any questions or comments for Mr. Sanderson before he goes back to his seat? Thank you, Mr. Sanderson. We
Thank
appreciate the job you and this committee does. If those of you who have an agenda before you will look, the next item is the consent agenda. That consists of items 2 through 8. However, in pre-council, the council, we talked about adding some other items. Now, these items on the consent agenda are considered to be very routine, rather self-explanatory, and they'll be enacted on in one motion. And approval of the consent agenda authorizes the city manager to implement each one of these items in accordance with the staff or board recommendations. As we were discussing these, it appeared to us that there were a number of other items that were self-explanatory and routine. So if you have your pencil out, item 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 18, and 19 are added. So out of the 23 items, we have added, I believe, 15 of those to the consent agenda. And in just a moment, we will take action regarding these 15 items, the ones I have just mentioned, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 18, and 19, in addition to items 2 through 8. After I've received a motion in regard to the consent agenda, I believe our city secretary will read the captions on items number 14 and 15 before the vote is taken. I'm open for a motion regarding the consent agenda. Councilmember Hurley.
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda with including the additional items.
Councilmember Avery.
That's for a second, Mayor.
We have a motion, a second. Councilmember Fowler.
Mr. Mayor, I have a resignation, so I think we need to pull 19 from our board and commission resignations. Had a resignation letter from one of my members.
That's 21, Trey.
Oh, I'm sorry. Disregard then, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Staub, if you would, read into the record the captions on items number 14 and 15.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 096009-01, the existing electric franchise between the City of Haltom City and Encore Electric Delivery Company, formerly TXU Electric, by declaring the method in which franchise fees will be calculated, providing a severability clause, providing an effective date, providing for publication, finding and determining that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law, and providing for acceptance by Encore Electric Delivery Company.
Okay, and that was item,
Item number 14.
14.
This is item number 15.
yes.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 098-04701, the existing gas franchise between the City of Haltom City and Lone Star Gas Company, to provide for a different consideration and to authorize the lease of facilities within the city's right-of-ways, providing an effective date, providing for acceptance by TXU Gas Company, finding and determining that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law.
Thank you, Ms. Staub. And to our city attorney, if you would, Mr. Olson, just for the explanation of the people in the audience, tell us why we read those two captions into the record.
Mayor, that is a requirement of your city charter that whenever the council approves an ordinance granting a franchise or amending a franchise to any utility company, the ordinances must be read at two separate meetings. And so the reading of the caption complies with that requirement in the charter.
Okay, so you may know what we just did, and hopefully that would make sense to you. Thank you for that explanation. We're now ready to to display the votes. If you will, gentlemen, register your vote regarding the motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda. And that passes by unanimous vote. As we move now to the next portion of our meeting, it is the Visitor Citizens Forum. This time is set aside for any person having business before the council that is not scheduled on the agenda to have an opportunity to speak to the council. We have 2 speakers' request cards that have been submitted, and to these I will call their name in just a moment. I want to remind you that all comments are to be directed toward the presiding officer rather than to an individual council member or staff. Each speaker must limit his comments to the subject matter listed on the speaker's request form, and you have a 5-minute time limit that will be granted. Now, because these items were not posted in accordance with the law, council cannot discuss or debate any issue brought forth at this time, nor can any formal action be taken. So our first speaker, G.H. Rumbaugh. Mr. Rumbaugh, if you will come forward, give us your name again and state your address for the record, and you have requested to speak on the subject of charter and ethics. You have 5 minutes beginning now, please.
Yes, sir. Good evening, council, mayor. Earlier today, I had a talk with a senior staff member. I had 2 questions to ask the staff member. Question number 1. Does Mr. Trey Fowler have 1 or more contracts with the city of Haltom City? Question number 2. Is there 1 or more members of this council at this time under a state ethics investigation? This staff member looked me dead in the eye and told me, he said, I cannot answer no to either question. That brings me to this, and I'll try to read this as quick as I can. Section 302, qualifications for council, item number 7, and section 403, filing for office, A7, both state that a candidate cannot have a financial interest in any contract with the city or sale of any equipment or materials or other articles to the city. Because of the contract the North Texas Land and Development Company has with the city, the question of Mr. Fowler's eligibility to run for city council was brought before the city council. In the minutes of the May 13th council meeting, on page 2, under newly elected candidate and council member section, Mr. Wayne Olson, city attorney, stated that the charter specified requirements for eligibility to file as a candidate for an officer of the city. However, prior court rulings have ruled that a citizen has the right to run as a candidate for the office and cannot be excluded from doing so by charter requirements. Because of this, Mr. Fowler was allowed to file as a candidate in the May 4 election and was elected to the council. The charter also states that the council members must declare a member eligible to hold an office as a council member. But at the same time, the oath of office that each and every one of the already seated council members swore to uphold, that says that they will, to the best of their ability, preserve, protect, defend the Constitution, the laws of the United States and of this state, the charter and ordinances of this city, which by voting to seat Mr. Fowler, knowing he had a contract still with the city, was clearly a violation of the city charter. Also, when Mr. Fowler signed an application declaring himself to be a candidate, he swore that he had no contract or financial interest with the city. When I voted for Mr. Fowler, I was led to believe that all his contracts with the city had been fulfilled. I was clearly misled about these matters. In the city's ethics policy, per charter, section 2-454, standards of conduct, A5A says that no city officer, employee, advisory board member, or their spouses shall knowingly engage or exchange in purchase or sale of property, goods, or services with the city except rendering services such as as a city officer, employee, or advisory board member. The same section, parts B And C, also deal with the same issue. A council member may not knowingly represent directly or indirectly any person, group, or business entity. Section D says that these restrictions do not apply to the business associates of the officers, only to personally to the officers. According to this, Mr. Fowler's business associate can address the council concerning North Texas Land and Development, but Mr. Fowler cannot represent this entity or any other holdings that he may have in the capacity as a city councilor.
Mr. Rumbaugh, if I might, you have 1 minute remaining on your allotted 5.
Disclosure of the interest reads, here in September, Mr. Fowler not only represented North Texas Land and Development, which was a violation, it clearly states that any time there's any discussion on anything he has to do with, he will leave the room or the chambers. He cannot sit here, which he violated. With these things that are done, I'm going to ask Mr. Fowler to resign as city council member. And if he chooses not to resign from city council, then I'm asking the council to direct to the city secretary to inform Mr. Fowler, per the charter, that he is no longer eligible to sit in that seat and he has to vacate the seat. If Mr. Fowler doesn't choose to do so, this council doesn't choose to do so, then other appropriate actions per the charter will be taken. Thank you very much.
Mr. Rumbaugh,
Yes.
I may not have heard you at the beginning. Did you give your name and address for the record?
I don't know whether it did or not, but I'll do it now.
Please.
My address is 4229 Joy Lee Street, Haltom City, Texas.
And your name?
G.H. Rumbaugh, R-U-M-B-A-U-G-H.
Thank you, Mr. Rumbaugh. Our next speaker, Jack Lewis. Mr. Lewis is requesting to speak on senior citizens tax relief. Mr. Lewis, if you will, be sure to give your name and address for the record before you begin your comments, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Jack Lewis. I live at 4600 Savelle. I have before you a list of resolutions passed by the Silver-haired legislature in Texas 2 weeks ago. There were a total of 40. At the top, the very first is DR 20, which states that freeze taxes on senior homesteads. The reason I'm bringing this before this body mainly is to inform our senior citizens that this resolution that we sponsored about a year ago with the Northeast Senior Leadership Group, we sponsored this resolution to freeze taxes for seniors over 65. The school taxes are frozen. The cities are not. We asked this council, or 2 to 3 times this past year, to do so. They would not. They would not even second the motion or the of former Councilman Patino, nor would they make a motion when the mayor brought this forth. So we did not have much luck with this council regarding senior citizens. Yesterday afternoon at a meeting of Governor Perry, Senator Jane Nelson, and others, I handed them a copy of these resolutions in an envelope. In talking with them, they are as enthused as I am. They had already endorsed the idea. Governor Perry told me last month at a campaign stop in Southlake he would sign the bill if it passed the House and the Senate. Now, on these resolutions that the Texas Municipal League adopts every 2 years, just like the regular legislature, they've had an 80% approval rate of the first 10 resolutions. We went down and testified before the committee that was handling this resolution. After testifying, it came out of committee unanimously, and it went to the floor, and the floor passed it overwhelmingly. So this has been passed as the #1 resolution for the state of Texas. That means Haltom City, as well as all other cities in Texas, will be affected if it goes into law. And when the governor has said he will support it, when 61 silver-haired legislators voted to make it #1, they voted unanimously to put it on there as one of the, but the big deal is to get it upscale at the top. And we got it to the top. So I want to thank everyone, citizens here in Haltom City. We had several petitions coming in from citizens all over Texas. And we want to thank them, and I want to encourage all of you, when the legislature meets in January, to contact your senators, your state representative, encourage them to support this. Senator Nelson and State Representative Fred Brown in Bryan, Texas, will be carrying it in the House and the Senate. So if you will, lobby for us, and let's get this thing passed so that we can get some tax relief for our seniors. I know we haven't had much luck here in Haltom City, but a lesson I've learned, when you turn down locally, there's always a higher power. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Those were the two who had signed speaker request forms, and we move forward now to announcements and events, and I believe Councilmember Fowler has 3 announcements he wants to make of very important things that are going to be taking place here in our city the next week or so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to announce that early voting has begun for our statewide elections. That will be held at the police storefront on Denton Highway. That's 3520, actually, Denton Highway, near the corner of Webster and Denton Highway. It's very well marked, is it not? Police storefront. If you go in there, I believe someone in there will be able to help you with the voting process. Also, we have a regular scheduled council meeting for next Monday night, the 28th, although we normally have them every 2 weeks. We're actually having our regular scheduled meeting will be on the 28th. We'll begin at pre-council at 6:30, council at 7. And then we also have a community event, the Haltom Halloween Carnival. It's very well participated with our youth, and I'm sure they're probably looking for volunteers at the Recreation Center to help in that. It's a great opportunity for the children and as well as the adults in our community to get out and support something that's a very community-based program. And that will be at the Rec Center on Broadway from 6 to 8 p.m. on Halloween evening. That's October 31st. It'll be Thursday, October 31st. And we hope everyone take time to get out, and if you can, if you have time to participate, either come by or volunteer for it. We would sure welcome any volunteers and welcome everyone in the community to come by and participate in the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Fowler. I know I had an opportunity the last few years to attend the Halloween festivities up at the Recreation Center, and that's a pretty neat community event, so thank you for bringing that to our attention. Do we have other announcements or events from members of the council at this time? Okay, there being none, we move forward now to item number 9. And Mr. Torres, would you like to introduce item number 9 for us?
Actually, I'd like to introduce Mr. Ray Kendall, our interim Public Works Director, and let him address the item if we could, Mayor.
Mayor, council members, citizens. Item number 9 is Roxy Street, 4800 and 4900 block. As the residents know in that area, we're in the process of rebuilding the utilities. We have laid the lines, and now we're planning to put in the services. And what is planned along with that is to put in sidewalks. We were approached by a couple members, residents of the area, and they asked if it was possible not to put in sidewalks. In addition, then we also had some members, residents ask us if it was possible to put in the sidewalks. So Mr. Morton, who lives in this 4800, 4900 block, got a petition together, and you all have a copy of that, and he acquired 23 of the 30 residents in that area asking for sidewalks. The budget or financial impact is about $33,000 to build these sidewalks. There will be some shrubs destroyed in the process, some plantings, some bushes. I noticed there was a gas light out front, or electric light out front that would have to be moved. But other than that, it's just the financial impact. So we're asking the council, there may be some citizens here that might want to address this issue tonight, if you want to entertain their comments, but we're asking for a decision. We also have a couple more streets planned, Revere and Lindsay. Revere already has sidewalks, but Lindsay does not. So if your decision tonight, there's probably 3 alternatives. As you know, in the new subdivisions, we require sidewalks. However, in the existing areas where the homes are already and the streets are already been built, there's been some areas where we have not, even after we put the utilities in, we did not put in sidewalks. So there's a choice now. We can decide street by street. We could make a policy that all new streets and utilities that we put in would get sidewalks automatically, or we don't want sidewalks in existing areas.
Before you leave the podium, Mr. Kendall, members of the council, any questions or comments for Mr. Kendall before we actually get into to this discussion? Councilmember Hurley.
Mr. Kendall, how many residents up there stated they did not want sidewalks?
There were 6 out of the 30 that did not.
6 of 30 did not want it?
Did not want.
And the rest of the people did want sidewalks?
23 requested sidewalks, and 1 person remained neutral.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions or comments for Mr. Kendall? Thank you, Mr. Kendall.
Thank you.
No one from the audience has signed up to speak on this subject, so we'll move forward to the council then regarding consideration and or action on the construction of sidewalks in the 4800 and 4900 block of Roxy. Councilmember Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the construction of Roxy Street with the addition of sidewalks as stipulated.
Councilmember Henderson.
That's first, second.
We have a motion and a second to approve construction of the sidewalks on the 4800 and 4900 block of Roxy. Councilmember Williams.
I was just wondering if anybody wanted to speak on this, if they would have had to sign a speaker's card for that item.
Yes, and we'll take time. If anyone would like to speak on this subject, I would like to have a speaker's card filled out. It won't take just a second to do that.
I don't know if there's anyone here, but I didn't know if there was. I know there was a lot of people here that up and around that area, but I didn't know that.
If one of
hearing,
you,
don't have to have
thank
it.
you for bringing.
But these people aren't here every week, so they're not.
Sure.
I
If one of-
apologize for interrupting.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. If one of you gentlemen will go ahead and be filling that out, and if you will go ahead and come to the podium, but I would like for you to fill that out before you start speaking. We'll take a break while you're doing that. Councilmember Jennings, did you have something you'd like to say before this gentleman speaks?
I would like to amend my motion that we allow city staff to determine the size of the sidewalks as was discussed in pre-council and the location of the sidewalks as to whether or not they will abut the street or whether they will be like a 5-foot walk as discussed previously in council. I think that would be something that the city engineer would need to get involved on.
Okay, you have heard a request to amend the motion. Councilmember Henderson, I believe you seconded it, or?
That'll be fine.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on this
Can I-
amendment.
discussion?
Councilmember Hurley?
I have a question. Mr. Kendall stated something to the effect about setting a policy. We had 3 choices which way to go. I say that the city has always gone on an individual basis, street by street. As this construction came up, are we going to continue to stay with this program? We're not setting policy, right?
No.
Not necessarily. I mean, this could be done on a
I don't believe we
case-by-case
can
basis.
set policy. It's not on the agenda. We're discussing Roxy Street alone tonight.
Okay, but we're not setting a policy as to which way we're
No.
going to go in the future on
No.
future sidewalks.
Not necessarily with the vote of this, no, that's correct.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, we have 2 citizens who filled out requests to address this issue. First is Mr. Craig Morton. I knew a gentleman by that name one time a few years ago. Would
Not
you
the
be-
same one, I don't
Not
think.
the same quarterback for that?
Doubtful.
Okay.
Okay.
Your address 4917 Roxy,
Correct.
and you would like to speak on this item,
Yes,
and
sir.
according to this, you're speaking in favor of the sidewalks.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that correct?
Correct.
Please
My name
proceed.
is Craig Morton. I reside at 4917 Roxy, where I've lived for the past 13 years. I've lived my entire life in Haltom City. My parents still live at 5001 Roxy, right down the street from us. And we're quite excited about when the street was being remodeled that we would be getting sidewalks. And a few weeks ago, to our shock, we were told that it might not happen. So wanting to try to find out what the people thought about it, we did a poll. Out of 30 houses, we found 23, which I turned into you guys a few weeks ago, the citizens that were requesting that, which is approximately 77% of the residents on that street. So clearly the majority has spoken, and the needs clearly outweigh any downsides. We might lose a few trees or all. I've been up and down the street a number of times. But the main thing that I'm here for is the safety of it all. I think that's why we mainly put sidewalks in. Definitely a lot of other benefits to it, but the safety is the main thing. I would consider the walkability of Haltom City one of our highest life priorities. How do you define the term of walkability? In a sense, one might consider residents leisurely stroll along maintained sidewalks, separating the plants from the street. You might also think of a mother walking her child down the sidewalk in a stroller. An elderly person might be able to walk down the street without fear of being in the street. I don't know if any of you have been on Roxy, but it's a pretty long block, but two cars get going pretty fast, and it can be a pretty dangerous place. Also, we feel that if we did have the sidewalks, that would allow our children to go all the way to David E. Smith, where most of them go to school now, because there is a sidewalk all the way down Field Street. So we would not have to endanger them getting down to the cross change there. We also have a handicapped gentleman that lives a couple houses down from me. He would now be able to go all over this place on the sidewalks, up and down Field where he normally goes. My father, who is handicapped, lives 3 houses down across Field, would be able to get to our house without even getting in the street, which is a huge concern of his. Imagine being 77 in a wheelchair. Sidewalk is a pretty safe place for him. So I hope that you'll do the right thing and get the sidewalks and approve this.
Okay, Mr. Morton, if you'll remain in position for just a moment. Members of the council, any questions or comments for Mr. Morton on his presentation? Okay, there being none, thank you, Mr. Morton.
Thank you.
The second gentleman who has filled out a speaker's request card tonight is Mr. Joe Garcia, 4813 Roxy. If you'll come forward at this time. And I believe, Mr. Garcia, you've indicated that you are against this request for inclusion of sidewalks.
Mr. Mayor and Council, the only question we have is, would not this money that's allocated for sidewalks be better spent to repair some of our streets? Jean Lane is in deplorable condition. Stanley Keller is like riding down a roller coaster. We see no effort to repair these streets, and we would prefer, we have nothing against sidewalks, but we would prefer in these days of tight money to see our money go for the repair of a street rather than for the addition of a sidewalk on streets that have been there for over 47 years without a sidewalk. I've lived in the 4813 Roxy for over 34 years. All of our children have been raised there satisfactorily. We've not had any problems with not having sidewalks. We'd appreciate if we had sidewalks today, but in view of the fact that money is tight as it is today, I think it would be more prudent use of our money to repair some of our streets. That's all the comments I have, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Members of the council, any questions or comments for Mr. Garcia? Councilmember Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. I've known Mr. Garcia a few years. We go quite a ways back, probably that 34 years. And I just want to say that I see you. You come out here tonight on the cane and on a cool night and to come voice your opinion. I appreciate you doing that. The other gentleman, Mr. Morton, has brought us a petition. And the way it looks, the majority of the people on Roxy would rather spend the money and put the sidewalks in. So I'm going to have a feeling since the motion and the second's been made, that's probably the way it's going to go. But I do appreciate your concern of coming out and appreciate your concern for our money and appreciate the taxes that you contribute to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. And thank both of you gentlemen for speaking up on this subject. We have a motion and a second before us. Members of the council, any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Jennings.
One question for staff. Could you give me some idea as to how many running feet of concrete street we could buy with $32,000?
Ballpark.
Yeah. I don't think 10 feet would be. I think we're probably looking at 2 feet.
I can't do the math that quick in my head,
Give
but
me a guess.
I can give you some figures. A concrete street's $165 a lineal foot. A sidewalk's $15. You do both sides, it's $30 a lineal foot. So you can see that sidewalks are less than 1/5 the cost of the street.
That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Councilmember Fowler.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as We discussed some different alternatives. Have we made a decision on which type of, assuming that this did pass, which type of sidewalk it would be put in place, or is that based to staff?
But that was deferred to staff to let them get together with engineering and determine what their idea was, whether we should go with 5 feet like you discussed in pre-council, whether it should abut the street, or if there should be, land in between the sidewalk. We'll let them determine that, and then based on what they determine on that street, then we can set policy or get in line with the next street that we do. I'd like for them all to be the same, so I think it's contingent upon what staff recommends to us, what we do from this point on.
Did you have a preference, Councilmember Fowler, regarding this issue?
Well, I mean, it's all gets down to personal preference. I'm sure some of the residents would prefer them to be the standard sidewalk, the 4 foot, your typical 4 foot walk with, say, 4 to 5 foot of grass in between the back of curb and the city walk. Another alternative that we had discussed in pre-council was, and this may be some of the input that some of the citizens need to provide for us, is possibly moving the sidewalks up to the right at the back of curb, and the sidewalk would begin from the back of curb, and instead of being a traditional 4 foot sidewalk, possibly make it a 5 foot wide. That way it allows a little more maneuverability for people to get up and down the right of way. And then it'll also, what it would do is eliminate some of the maintenance that's required from the back of curb up to the city walk. So there's some different alternatives that we looked at that some of the people that weren't here in the pre-council meeting didn't have the opportunity to hear discussed. But I'm sure that's what engineering and our public works director will be discussing. And if we would, I'd just like to ask that maybe I get a report on that so that we could keep up with it.
We will provide you that back, assuming this motion passes.
Thank you.
Mr. City Manager, any comment you want to make on this subject before I call for a vote?
No, I think from staff's perspective, and we've discussed this a number of times, I think the sidewalks are an important feature to quality neighborhoods. I certainly, speaking from a guy who's got 4 young kids, those sidewalks are an important element to my neighborhood. And they're not always used, and they sit there a lot, and they're very expensive to do, but it's infrastructure that will be in that neighborhood for a long time to come, certainly probably through several generations, especially the way we're building these streets, primarily concrete. These streets and sidewalk infrastructure are going to last a lot longer than the traditional asphalt have done. So I think it's important that we take a hard look at this and not make a fast decision. But when citizens speak, majority rules. I mean, that's how this whole organization operates through this democratic process, and it's very difficult to overlook that and go the opposite way. So I feel certain that that's a smart decision, just to go with how the majority of the people want this to be done. So we'll take a look at it and consider any alternatives that we may come up with. The placement of the sidewalks, if we in fact move them out to the street, isn't going to save us any significant amount of money. I'm quite certain, if there's any savings at all, it'll be negligible. However, what that will do, it will give some ease to the amount of property that's being lost in the yards. And to some people that's a priority. To others, they'd rather have the sidewalks and are willing to give it up. So we'll take a look at it. We'll make a decision. We'll inform the council as to what decision we've made and as to why we've made that decision. And hopefully y'all will be able to live with that. And we'll certainly have more projects like this to be dealing with in the future.
Councilmember Fowler.
I guess one other thing, Mr. Morton, if you don't mind, did you carry the petition in your neighborhood?
I was one of the 3.
Okay. If we could, maybe if you would have time to give your name and phone number to the staff, that way we can keep maybe you abreast where you can.
Yeah, we have that on here.
Okay.
Yeah, we have it on the speaker's request card.
Thank you very much.
Any further comments on the motion before us? Everyone clear on the motion of what we're about to vote on? Okay. Assuming everyone is, if you'll register your vote, we'll display it. and that passes by unanimous vote. Gentlemen, we have been here an hour. Would you like to take a break? Okay, 5-minute break, and we'll be back and proceed from this point. Order following that brief recess, and we do thank you for your indulgence in allowing us to get up and walk around a little bit. Some of us old guys like me need to get up and stretch every so often, so thank you for your indulgence. We're ready now, if you will. If we can come to order, please. We're ready to move on to item number 10, the School Resource Officer in BISD. And Councilmember Jennings, I believe you placed this item on the agenda. Would you like to introduce it at this time,
I certainly
please?
will. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At our last regularly scheduled meeting, we talked about what we were going to do. Let me get this on. Thank you. At our last regularly scheduled meeting, we talked about what we were going to do in regard to the school resource officers to be placed in the schools of the BISD. At the time we ratified the current operating budget, we stated that at our next regularly scheduled meeting, this would be a standalone agenda item and that the council would discuss it and determine what they want to do at that time. That is the reason this is on the agenda tonight, and at this point I'd like to open it up for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Jennings. We do have one appearance before the council card filled out. Mr. Jack Lewis, if you will come forward at this time. Following that, we'll open the floor to a discussion by the council, and we'll move forward to take action on this. If you will, give us your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Jack Lewis. I live at 4600 Sabelle here in Haltom City. I hope that this council will reconsider or consider keeping our police officers on the school campus. There were several people spoke at the last meeting, and they could not come to the council meeting tonight. They had a meeting at the school. Most of their children are in the band, and they are going to some national convention for the band for Haltom High School. And so they're there tonight, but they asked me to speak. They had regarding it, and y'all know how I feel. I think it's a priority. Our children are a priority. We've heard the word tight money several times here tonight. And there's some areas I think the city council should consider possibly cutting if they've got to cut. There was an article in the Star-Telegram about the first part of last month in which a councilman stated that money was tight and our budget had to be cut in order to be balanced, and this was a place to cut it. Well, I disagree with that. A lot of other people disagree with it, and we would urge all of you to consider seriously cutting other places. There was a fellow mentioned the sidewalks. There's an area. There's other areas. They're not as important as our children's protection on our school campuses and all over the city. And one of the councilmen mentioned here at the last council meeting, I believe, that the police budget was slaughtered. I believe that the number one priority of a governing body is to protect the people. And yet we picked the very department responsible for that to slaughter the budget. Now, some say, well, let the schools pay for it. The city was told by this council that this 1/4% sales tax, if it was passed for this crime district, it would be used for the police department, including these resource officers. And I think one of the councilmen remarked, well, we don't have to go by that. Well, the fact is, I believe the Securities and Exchange Commission has something to say about that. When you say you're going to do something with bond money, which is going to bondholders, you cannot change your mind and spend it on something else. So I would hope that you would reconsider and keep our police officers in the schools. These folks that came, and they regret not being able to be here. There was a large number of them the last time. They're concerned with their children, and they apologize for not being here tonight, and some are at the last meeting, as we mentioned, but it was canceled. So we hope that y'all will consider this a high priority and keep our police officers on the campuses, as well as continue to fund them the amount necessary to protect the people. I think this is a #1 priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. And we move now to members of the council. Councilmember Fowler, I believe you had your light on first.
I had a question for Mr. Lewis, if we could.
Yeah, Mr. Lewis, if you would come back.
Mr. Lewis, you and I had the opportunity to serve together, did we not?
Yes,
Did we not at that time vow to our citizens that we were going to hold the tax rate the same?
What years was this?
Well, the first
What
year,
day?
The first year.
I don't remember what. In fact, that was 20 years ago, man. I don't remember what. What's your question again?
Well, I'm asking you because.
Well, I don't know.
Is this council bound? Is this council bound by what was done 13 years ago?
You tell me, are you?
No, sir.
You're not? Well, then you take the police out of the schools.
Every administration can't take on the same budgets and everything else.
They can do other things.
Gentlemen, just a moment.
I'm just asking
Only
a question.
one of you.
I've already answered it, so we'll go on.
One of you speak at a time. Mr. Fowler
Okay,
has
thank you.
the floor at the moment.
Yes, sir. Yes. I have the letters to the editor about cuts in. Of course, it's been every month, but cuts in drainage that we need to stop the flooding. Residents are being flooded, and yet last I believe it's the last council meeting. Is that correct? That you had brought up the drainage utility district, and it was another tax, and it was a bad deal, but yet citizens are being flooded. I look at this. You ask for senior citizens to have relief and cut taxes for senior citizens, and yet if we don't have the funding to fund the SROs, yet you're asking us to raise taxes somewhere else. I'm just, for curiosity's sake, you and I had served together. Can you explain to me how we do all this? It's easy to come up and say that there's problems, but how do we solve all these problems?
Okay, it's okay to answer that, Mr. Mayor. I tell you one thing, let's talk about when I was mayor. The tax rate was 63 cents when I became mayor, per 100. It was reduced down to 35. Y'all raised it back to 47 now. The senior citizen... 45. The senior citizen exemption was raised in 1986 while I was mayor by 10% for all the people. The homestead exemption was raised to $40,000. It has not been raised since then, and yet evaluations were raised this year on my house, which is an average house, and my city tax increased 38%. You look at your budget, let me ask you, how much did the revenue for this year's budget increase over last year?
The revenues?
Yes, revenue.
About 5%.
5% in dollars. It's over $1 million. Now, if you can't get by with this city and keep our police department intact with an additional $1 million, now my Social Security did not increase that much. Prescription drugs have. That's why $47 a year will not hurt this city to give our senior citizens some relief. I'm talking about priorities, Trey.
I understand what you're talking about, but I'm asking you, you're talking about that's a priority, seniors are a priority?
Yeah.
School resource officers are a priority?
Yeah.
Repairing streets are a priority?
Yes.
Beautification's a priority?
Yeah.
And everything's a priority, but yet where are we getting the money from? Yet, let me ask you, when we ask about raising taxes, if the citizens would be able to, or would accept raising taxes to pay for the SROs, you had comments in here in the editorial that wasn't necessary. So
You want to know where you're getting it?
I'm getting it from.
All right. Ad valorem tax is about 1/3 of the revenue of this city. You're getting it from the franchise fees. You're getting it from the sales tax. In fact, the sales tax on 1/4% brings in roughly $1 million. That money was earmarked for officers, police. In fact, your police the board just came up here and told about where it's being used. Now, some of that is being used for these officers. I think they ought to be in every school. After 9/11, as you well know, we're at war, whether it's Haltom City or New York City, and our children are a priority. And these mothers that stood down here, they read in the Star Telegram where y'all intended to have to cut the budget because money is tight. And yet I've sat here and watched this council, even without any consideration, vote $17,000 for lights in the park.
Could we have a point of order, Mayor?
And your point of order is?
We're not discussing the budget, we're discussing the SRO officers.
We probably do need to keep the
We
discussion.
have got off the subject terribly.
We do need to keep the subject germane to the issue, and I remind Councilmember Fowler and Mr. Lewis both of that. We need to keep the subject germane to the school resource officer.
Okay, are there any more questions?
Order well taken.
Relating to the SRO?
I just, what is your recommendation on the SROs? That's,
Keep them in the schools.
but how do we fund them?
That's y'all's problem. You ran for this council again. You were here before. Why did you come back on the council?
Because I wanted to try to help continue making
Okay, let's do
progress
it.
in this.
That's your job.
We
Thank you.
appreciate your input, and I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Councilmember Williams or Councilmember Jennings, do either of you have a question for Mr. Lewis?
No, he can be seated out in Jimmy time.
Councilmember Jennings?
Mr. Lewis, are you under the interpretation that the Crime Control Prevention District is a bond issue rather than a tax issue? You stated that it was a bond issue. Is that correct?
What he said.
Pardon me?
The Crime Control and Prevention District quarter-cent sales tax that was originally passed, you stated that was a bond issue. Is that the assumption that you were
No,
under?
no, that's not a
what you
bond
said.
issue. That was an increase in the sales tax, and you know that, 1/4%,
Well, I know that,
earmarked
that's
for
not what you
police.
said. You said it was a bond issue, and we were bound by
get
that issue as a
the
bond
city
issue.
secretary will correct the
Gentlemen,
minutes.
Gentlemen, just a moment. Only one person speaks at a time.
Go ahead.
I'm just stating that if you're under the interpretation that that was a bond proposal, you're incorrect. It is a city tax, and the city council determines how that money is spent. I realize the world is going to come to an end here tonight because, believe it or not, I'm going to agree with Jack Lewis when it comes to the SRO officers in our schools. On just about everything else, I'm going to be in disagreement with you.
Okay, well, let me try to convince the other six.
Okay, anything further, Mr. Lewis, before you're seated? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Jennings, do you have anything further?
No, sir.
Councilmember Williams?
Well, I too will have to stand by the cross. I want to agree with one of Mr. Lewis's philosophies that the SRO officers need to remain in school. I'd like to point out that the city manager was directed by the city council a while back to contact BISD and tell them of our intentions to see if we could work some sort of a partnership between the school district and the city. And I would like to ask the city manager at this time, were you answered back by the school district?
No, I was not. I have addressed them several times through letters.
You were not contacted by letter or by phone from anyone in the district concerning this?
No.
So there was just lack of interest through the district?
I feel like they were just sitting back and waiting to see what we did.
Well, I think this is a body of us. We want to protect our students. We have 2 high schools in town. One of them has 7 different cities' children attending that school. The other one has 2 different cities attending that school. And the citizens of Haltom City bear that load through their taxes. This man gets up here tonight and he tells us he wants to cut taxes, wants to raise the exemption, but he wants to add spending. The more money that you cut, the less money you can spend. It's easy if you look in your checkbook, if you have a checkbook, or if you just look in your wallet. A 5-year-old kid can look in his piggy bank. If he wants an ice cream bar and it's a dime, he's got a nickel, he don't have enough to get it. He's going to have to find somewhere to get the other nickel. I'm tired of the side shots. I'm tired of making a political deal. I'm tired of getting this newspaper, and every time you pick it up, it's signed by Jack Lewis, the city of Haltom City. The city council is doing a terrible job. We're up here for $20 a month, and I'm sick of it. We're going to put the school officers in that school, and we're going to pay for them. We're going to take responsibility. But when you got a guy up here, there's a difference between senior exemptions and welfare. Jack Lewis pays $67 a year Haltom City tax. I dare say that he causes our city secretary much more than that a year in open records requests and his frivolous stuff that he comes up with, the waste of time. I don't know who these people are that had something at school. I see Miss Robinson on the front row. She goes to school. She attended tonight with her daughter. And Amanda, I'm going to see you get your officers in that school. We're going to pay for them. There will be something in Haltom City have to be cut back on. We don't know what it is. But I'd also like to put BISD on notice that next year we would like a little help, maybe from Watauga, to help pay for these. We got sidewalks, we got streets, we got more construction going on than ever before. The people that are coming up here complaining, writing the letters to the editor, the reason they can't stand it, it's progress, and their name's not on the end of the progress. If you're not part of the solution, you're a problem. And Mr. Lewis, if you want us to cut your taxes and want us to add spending, sit down. I'm not through. I'm not addressing you to come up and talk. You've had your 5 minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I'm reading on this here where you're not to attack.
Mr. Lewis,
I'm not attacking.
Mr. Lewis, I want to let me address that from the mayor's position.
Thank
if
you.
you will be seated. And let's keep the discussion germane, as you pointed out a moment ago. When discussions wander a little bit, we need to pull it back to being germane to school resource officers. So if you would,
I got my point in, but you know, we need, when this city gets to where they start working together, you got all these individuals getting out here. You want peace in the Middle East, and you can't get peace in Haltom City. It's going to have to start somewhere, and it's going to have to start here. And so when you're ready, I'll make a motion the city go ahead and fund these SRO officers, direct the city manager to find out some way to do it. And I would like to put a BISD on notice that next year that we'd like to have them in the city of Watauga come with some sort of relief for the city of Haltom City and not make them have to bear the entire deal themselves.
Okay, before I'll receive a motion, we have 3 lights on. I want to give the colleagues on the council an opportunity to speak before I receive a motion. I believe Councilmember Fowler, you had your light on first.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Just as a quick deal to kind of synopsis of this thing. We came to the budget meeting looking for some things. We're up here and elected as stewards of this city and try to do the things that we can to protect our citizens. Believe it or not, we try to protect and get the most money out of every dollar we can for each and every one of y'all, and as well as ourselves. We're citizens also. The SROs cost the city a little over $200,000. We have Shannon Center that we provide an officer for, that there's 7 different cities that send students through the BISD that you, the citizens, and myself spend every penny furnishing that officer for. Every single penny. Now why? What the question was to BISD, we have, let me go back, we have Haltom High School that's plus or minus 60% Haltom City students, probably 40% or more students from Watauga. We fund 100% of that, the citizens of Haltom City. We came in the budget workshop and asked BISD to provide some funding for these officers because we feel like that we pay city taxes and we pay school taxes. Why do our school taxes not cover school resource officers? Why do they not cover their own policing whenever, you know, we pay our city taxes, we pay our school taxes? Why can't the school taxes take care of the burden? We look down there at the things below the hill, the brand new ad building, the brand new ticket office box down there on the football field that we don't very rarely use, the facilities that we have. You know, we came and we tried to find $200,000 to do things for our employees, to do things for our citizens. So that's where this idea came from. We didn't want to cut the SROs. We wanted to put an individual and shrink beats down and put, instead of having 5 officers on the street at a time, have 7. Use that money to put more police on patrol instead of a policeman sitting in a school and covering part of the students from Watauga that are from Watauga that they don't provide any funding for us, covering students from North Richland Hills, Watauga, Fort Worth, part of Colleyville, part of Keller that go to the Shannon Center that you as citizens are funding 100% of. That's where this came from. It's not trying to get rid of police in the schools. The idea was to shrink beats down, put more police on the streets, like the crime control district that I interpreted to be, that I supported and voted for. That's the reason. That was the initiative for this. It's not to cut police off the streets. It's to actually add them to it and still cover our schools and do the things that we needed to do. We asked the school district, and we had meetings, and we had individuals from the school board here. We have not received any type of communication at all from the school system. And that's the history of this whole subject, so that we'll know.
Anything further, Councilmember Fowler? Councilmember Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to go on record as stating that at no point during the discussion of the budget or any time since then have I ever wanted the SRO officers removed from the school. I did have an interview with the Star Telegram at which time I did say that it was budget time, and everyone, and this is a direct quote, everyone had their hand out, everyone wanted a little piece of the pie. I didn't say that we should take anything away from the BISD. I never stated that the school resource officers should ever go. These 6 gentlemen up here and the mayor can testify to the fact that I have always been opposed to the removal of those SRO officers. I am also opposed to the fact that the BISD feels absolutely no need whatsoever to become involved in the protection of your sons and daughters. You know, they think it's our job to teach them. You know, you send them here, we'll teach them. We don't have to protect them. You know, we don't have to worry about that. That's somebody else's job. Well, I'll tell you this. If that is their mindset, then we are an accident waiting to happen. I know there's a gentleman at Haltom High School right now that his sole reason for being there is for security. And he wants these SRO officers just about as bad as anybody in Haltom City does. Well, I'm here to say that any way we can do it, we're going to have to do it. It's our job. We're required to do it. On the other hand, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever that the BISD cannot come to the table next year with some type of an agreement where they can shoulder a little of this burden. They didn't have any trouble at all raising my taxes 5 cents, and I'm going to pay them because I don't have a choice. You know, I don't know where they're taking this money. I don't know what they're doing with it. Yes, we do have some fine teachers. My daughter's a teacher. I think they deserve every penny that they make. But on the other hand, I have a real problem taking the money from the citizens of Haltom City and putting those SRO officers up there, knowing that students from Watauga are there, students from North Richland Hills are there, students from Hearst are there, some students from Fort Worth are going to the Shannon Center. All of those people are going up there, and they're doing it on our dollar. Do they deserve to be protected? You dang right they do. If I drive through one of their cities, I deserve to be protected in their city too. And that's the reason I think we need to do this. But I do not believe that we need to continue to do this at the cost of our citizens from this point on, just because it's always been done that way. That is the most asinine idea I have ever heard of. Something has got to change.
Anything further?
No, sir.
Councilmember Jennings. Okay, I believe no one else has any comment to make before I receive a motion. Councilmember Williams, you spoke a moment ago saying that when we were ready for a motion, you were ready to make one. I'm ready to receive a motion at this time.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that the city of Haltom City fund the 2 SRO officers at the Shannon Center in Haltom High School. I'd like to do that through the next budget year. I'd like to have BISD put on notice that we are going to go ahead and fund them this year. Next year, they need to look at some relief for us to help us fund those. I'd also like to put the city of Watauga on notice to possibly get some relief from them to help them, because if we're going to be covering all those students from all those different cities, we need some relief. The citizens of Haltom City don't need to be bearing the cost by themselves. So, put BISD on notice, and put the city of Watauga on notice, and direct staff to send out letters according to that. But we will fund the 2 officers for the next budget year.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. That's for a second.
Okay, Councilmember Jennings.
For a question, Mr. Williams, as part of your motion, You stated that we would fund the 2 SRO officers for Shannon and for Haltom High School. I think that probably it would be better if we just stated that we would fund the 2 SRO officers and let the police department determine where they would be stationed and when and if they would need to be moved. I don't think we should tie them to one particular school.
I was just making the point that the 2 schools will be covered.
Also, I think you mentioned specifically the city of Watauga, but the city of North Richland Hills was left out of that. I think that that should also be amended, that any city having students attending Shannon should be contacted.
How about the entire 7 cities be contacted, Mr. Mayor? Add that to the language. Add that to the motion to relieve from the 7 participating cities in Shannon and the 1 participating city in Watauga.
Okay, the city secretary have that, okay?
Is that clear enough, Wayne?
Clear as mud. I think we're all following what your motion is. You want to send notice to the other.
I want to fund them.
The other
I want to put them on
entities ready to
notice for
participate
next year.
Okay, Councilmember Henderson.
That's okay.
Okay, second to that amended motion.
Second.
Anything further, any further discussion? You will, gentlemen, register your vote, and that passes unanimously. Before we go on to the next item, I have a responsibility, I think, as the mayor of Haltom City and as the chairman of this meeting, to point out the fact that in a civilized society, it is very important for us to maintain proper decorum. I particularly have the responsibility to maintain order and decorum in the council meetings. We crossed over the line tonight. We crossed over from the speaker's stand this way, and we crossed over, in my judgment, from those of us who are up here that way. I'm appealing to all of us to contribute our part to keep focused on the issues and leave out as much, and I know some of these discussions get really emotional and they get real intense, but if we can keep our discussion on the issues and leave the personalities out, we will provide a quality of leadership in Haltom City that I think the citizens elected us to provide, but we've got to have everybody's cooperation in that. Far and away, the vast majority of the time, we, in my judgment, all of us, conduct ourselves with order and decorum. Just a warning I want to make tonight in that regard, and ask for the help of the citizens and from my colleagues here on the council to maintain that.
I'd like to apologize to you and to this body.
Mr. Lewis,
I have not used the 5 minutes, and I will say I want to apologize. I have been attacked personally, and I reacted. I shouldn't. I know better, and I want to apologize to the council if I appeared to be overly responsive. Trey, known you since a kid, I apologize to you if I didn't do right. I'm human. Williams, I have nothing against you guys personally. These are issues, but you're right. We deviated. I apologize.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. And I extended a point of privilege here that I don't normally do in allowing someone to come back up to the front after they have spoken. My job gets pretty tough up here sometime. Councilmember Williams, before we move on to the next item.
That's the reason you get paid the same we do. I would like to go on record to apologize to the citizens of Haltom City. It's very emotional to sit up here, to be accused, be attacked, and people come up here and speak at the podium and not even know what the action of this council is. And the children are important to us, the city is important to us, and once we learn to put our hands in each other and walk forward, Haltom City will be a lot better off, and I think we took steps. I apologize to the city of Haltom City. Jack, you get on my nerves. I apologize to you, and see you in the newspaper.
Councilmember Fowler.
I'd like to accept Mr. Lewis' apology and also apologize myself if anything. All I was trying to do is create debate. You know, that's the good thing about democracy. I know it oftentimes seems like we're up here trying to bicker and argue. That's not what it's about. I encourage any citizen. You know, everyone has their right to their opinion, and as well as myself. And none of us forfeit our rights as council members to the opinions that we have also. You know, that's what makes this city, and it's what's going to make it continue to get better, is by having new ideas brought in and people coming up here. You know, the thing is, we just have to do it in a gentlemanly manner. You know, that's the main thing. I don't think anyone on this council shirks debate, not one bit. I don't think anyone's scared to discuss anything, or if we do something wrong, come up here and tell us how you feel. You know, just, we all need to do it professionally. That's the main thing. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. And I want to follow up on that just a little bit. I pointed out a moment ago a weakness. I pointed out, I think, what was a failure tonight. And we've had the various individuals step forward, accept some responsibility, and extend to each other an olive branch. And that's part of what can make Haltom City great. We need to carry this city to a higher level. Some of the arguing and the bickering that has occurred historically, the people of Haltom City are getting tired of that. And when we can step forward the way we did tonight, and we're going to make mistakes. There are going to be times when emotions get in the way, and when we say things back and forth that falls outside the realm of order and decorum. When that happens, to have men and women who are big enough to step up and say, I made a mistake. That's the mark of great leadership, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the overture of all individuals involved. And having said that, with that fine spirit of taking the high road and moving forward to provide leadership and discussion and council meetings, taking them to a higher level, I move now to item number 16, the Volunteer Service Board, and we'll continue the fine tradition we've just discussed of being able to maintain order and decorum with regard to this subject as we provide leadership here in Haltom City. Councilmember Jennings, I believe you placed this item on the agenda. Would you like to introduce it at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm almost afraid to after that last one, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot.
Please do.
Mr. George Fowler had notified the council that we were having trouble getting a quorum of the Volunteer Service Board. We've lost quite a few members on that particular board. We are short or have no applications for people that want to serve on that board or commission. At our last regularly scheduled meeting, since this was not a posted agenda item, we could not take action on it. I requested that we place agenda item number 16 on the agenda tonight so that City Council can determine if they want to continue with the Volunteer Service Board or move that over into some other function within the city.
Okay, thank you for that introduction, and with that, I'm ready for discussion from the council that will ultimately lead to a motion for us to move forward with consideration and our action regarding whether to continue the existence of. Councilmember Hurley.
Mayor and council, I feel like that this Volunteer Service Board has been a vital link to helping a lot of people. The intent and purpose of it that was carried out has probably outlived its usefulness, because some of the things that citizens want fixed are beyond the capability of the Volunteer Service Board to fix. Instead of just mowing yards, cleaning up yards, fixing fences, stuff like that. It's my understanding, and I've made a couple of meetings, same as John Williams and Mayor Pro Tem Phil Jennings, but some of their requests exceed the capability because the city cannot put funding or money into something that's private property to improve somebody's property. Some of these property owners are requesting roofs be put on, awnings be built, carports be built, things like this. This exceeds the request of the normal person in dire need. And also, probably burnout of some of the Volunteer Service Board members has caused them to come up short on making a quorum on their meetings. I've talked with a couple of them, and they feel like that they would still like to do it, but there's not enough interest really to keep it going. They feel like, too, that it's probably outlived its usefulness. So I move that council approve the motion to disband the Volunteer Service Board for lack of participation in volunteers.
If I might, before I recognize the other gentlemen who have lights turned on, the city manager had just made me aware of something that he had had a private discussion with the city attorney on, and I'd like to ask for his input at this point because it may impact any further discussion.
We're asking for your opinion.
Wayne, yes, I thought you were gone. You want to go over to the podium where we can see you?
I'm not going to presume to know what the council is going to vote on this item, but if the council is in favor of dissolving the Volunteer Service Board, since this board was created by ordinance, it is codified in Chapter 2 of your city code book, we would bring back an ordinance at the next council meeting for first reading to formally remove that from your codification. But tonight, what the staff would need is direction from you to do that if you are in favor of dissolving this board.
Yeah, I think we all, any questions though for Mr. Olson? Okay, I believe that was plain enough. I think Councilmember Fowler, Jennings, and Williams, please, in that order.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to clarify for the audience that this board has not been able to have a quorum since May of this year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Who did I say was next? Councilmember Jennings.
It was me, but that was the question I had, was in regard to quorum.
Councilmember Williams.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Bobby Arthur and the Senior Citizen Center down there. They worked tirelessly putting this together. George Fowler, Steve Van Zandt, Reverend Steve Van Zandt, and the volunteers that worked on that board. I'm about the middle of my 5th year on the council, and this board was in progress when I came along. As a matter of fact, that's one of the first volunteer deals that I got in on was the Volunteer Service Board. I think it's a very, very helpful board. I don't think that the board is going to die as far as Bobby Arthur and Steve Van Zandt and some of the members involved. If there's a need out there and we can meet it and we prove that it's a dire need, I think the city will still step up with these volunteers and other volunteers and take care of that. But I would like to second the motion that Mr. Hurley made, if it hasn't been seconded yet, and thank those that are involved and direct staff.
I was a little distracted when Mr. Hurley was talking with what the city manager was making me a note on about the need to get Wayne into this. Did you make a formal motion?
Yes.
Okay. Would you mind repeating that for my benefit?
Direct staff.
I move that the Volunteer Service Board be disbanded
Would you amend that to say that also by ordinance?
by ordinance.
Okay.
And
I will second that motion.
Second. And are we clear on what we're doing? We're not taking the action tonight. That's got to come back at the next meeting. Is that what I
It'll
understand?
have to have an ordinance read twice.
Okay.
to dissolve it.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, there being none, if you'll register your vote, and that shows it passing by unanimous vote. We come now to the final item no, not the final item, to the Charter Review Committee. That item placed on the agenda by Councilmember Williams. Councilmember Williams, would you like to introduce that subject at this point?
How are we doing on time, Mr. Hurley? We'd discuss this in pre-council. We're going to have enough time. We'll discuss it. If we won't, we'll...
Just briefly.
Okay. I placed that on the charter, on the agenda to form a charter review board. State law says a homeroom charter can review its charter at least every 2 years. The last time ours was reviewed was in November of '99 is when the vote was. There's some verbiage problems in the charter. One of them the city secretary refers to as him. We can all clearly see that him is not down there, she is down there. This is just some of the verbiage that is out of order in it. One of them says that the city secretary has to reside in Haltom City. That might be something they want to look into when they do the charter. I would like to have an unbiased group serve on the charter this time. And the mayor's brought up a couple of issues here recently concerning the charter, and I've looked in there as well. And I don't think it'd be a waste of time to review it. Reviewing it doesn't mean that we have to have a vote on
changing the charter. It just means that we review and see if there are any imperfections in it or anything that could cause us a lawsuit. We do it, find out there's nothing wrong with it, don't have to have the vote, then it's a bargain that the money we spent. I'd like to first state that I'm not in favor of changing the term limits. As some of y'all know, I'm serving in my last term. The reason I'm putting this on there is not to get term limits increased. I will go on record tonight to say, if this committee deems it necessary to increase term limits or do away with term limits, I will not, I'll repeat, I will not seek re-election for place 3 in 2004. This will be my last term as I spend as a city councilman in place 3. I'd like to open this up to my fellow council members and get some of their ideas on it. I don't want to make a political deal and mix this up with I don't want to push to get it in on the May election with the city council election, mayor's election. I'd like to take time, do it right, possibly looking at maybe next August before we'd even have an election on it. And we'd also went through some stuff in pre-council, and I won't bore the audience or the people via TV that listen to that. But if we do decide to form a charter review committee, I talked with Mr. Hurley briefly right before the meeting, and we'd suggested that maybe the council have a mini workshop on it before we appoint our members to it, and that way we'd have a little direction as what we were going to do on it. And at that time, we'd be able to bring it back to the council and appoint our members to it.
If I understand, Councilmember Williams, what you're asking from your colleagues tonight is just some discussion to hear their ideas. Is that
Yes,
correct? Okay, the floor is open then for comments from other members of the council. Councilmember Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that the idea does have merit. I think it's something that we need to look into. On a personal level, I want to save money. Would not throw out the idea of if we do have a charter review and an election is necessitated, that we would have that election in conjunction with the elections in May. That way you do not increase the cost to the citizens by a penny. So I certainly would be for that. I would be for forming the members of that committee as we discussed in pre-council, with each council member appointing one person and the mayor appointing one person. I'd like to keep it to 8. Mr. Hurley advised us last time when we had 16 that it led to quite a bit of confusion, and I do agree with that. He also said that the last time this was done, the city council did not give the people that were on that committee much direction. So I am encouraged by the fact that we appear to be leaning in the direction of having a council workshop on this, determining how we're going to approach it before we appoint these particular members to this charter review committee. So I certainly would be in favor of doing that before any members were appointed. Other than that, I do agree with some of the things that John has brought up here tonight. There are some errors. There's always going to be errors in your charter. Typographical errors, small things like that. The world does not come to an end on. What we're looking for is anything that's glaring, that sticks out, that could cause us a possible lawsuit in the future. Certainly we want to correct that as quickly as possible, and we want the document to be as clean as possible. So I am for the forming of that committee. I am for the workshop of the city council members, and I would be for a number of 8 people serving on that particular committee.
Councilmember Henderson, Hurley, and Markham, in that order, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I, too, am in favor of forming a charter review committee. I would be against what Councilmember Jennings stated, holding it in May. I wouldn't be for that. I'd be for something like what John mentioned in August. I am for the 8-member panel. I want to throw something out. I know we discussed it in pre-council. Neither Councilmember Williams or Jennings mentioned it, but if we do appoint 8 members, I would want them to preside something similar as to the way we preside here. The elected chairperson not be a voting member, and vote only in case of a tie, like the mayor does with this board. I think that would be a good idea. You know, the chairperson to chair the meeting and vote only as needed. And that body elect that chairperson. But I would be in favor of getting a charter review committee together. That's all.
Thank you. Councilmember Hurley.
Mayor, I believe we're all on the same page and wanting the same thing. And whenever you're ready for a motion, I would move that we do set a work session of the council to discuss this as the sole matter of the meeting.
Okay, if
And
you'll
set some
hold that
guidelines.
motion for just a moment, I'll come back to you. Councilmember Markham had his light on and want to give him an opportunity to speak before we receive a motion.
Thank you, Mayor. As we discussed briefly in pre-council, I think Councilmember Fowler and myself had kind of the same thoughts. I was going to make a proposal, and I talked to a couple of council members earlier today, and I didn't get a hold of Councilmember Fowler. I would like to do something, if we do this charter review, of which I'm in favor of, I would like to do something different. Probably something this city's never done before that I remember. The makeup of any board does at times get political. It may not start out that way, but a lot of times it ends up that way. For this charter review committee, if it goes that far, I would like to see this council appoint new people. People that have never served on a board. No former mayors or their spouses. No former council members or their spouses. No board members that have been on a board in this city, present or past, nor are members of the past charter review committee. New people. They may have some new ideas, some fresh blood. And I think that's vital to this city. I think it's vital to this city council. And Mayor, if we go that far with this committee, I would hope that this council would follow that. Thank you.
Okay, before I receive the motion from Councilmember Hurley, we've had a couple of council members who haven't spoken yet. I'll give both of those individuals an opportunity to do so, and then we'll call on Councilmember Williams. Okay, I don't believe either of them wish to do so. Councilmember Williams, and then we'll go to Councilmember Hurley for the motion.
I thought he already made his motion. Let him make his motion. I'm going to second it when he does. I may second what he motioned.
Okay.
He may make a motion to have me leave.
I'll second that.
Mayor, I move that we set a work session for the council for the sole purpose of discussing the establishment of a charter review committee, the guidelines, the qualifications, the goals to be determined, probably at our next council meeting. Would the 28th? It's up to the council's pleasure, whatever would be a good date.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Is that a second?
Mr. Hurley, how long do you think that this little meeting will take? Do you think we could do it prior to a council meeting or after?
I think we could, really.
Yeah.
I think we're all on the same page. It's just a matter of getting all the details worked out as to what we want.
Why don't we set it since we're going to have a short meeting next week, the city secretary has already assured us that it's going to be a short agenda, and we're going to do a lot of the executive session nights. The city attorney is going to assure us that we're going to have a short executive session. Is that right, mister? Thank you. And so if you'll amend your ordinance to make it after next week's council meeting, immediately following executive session.
I'll amend my motion to
Make your motion, I'll second it.
Council meeting.
Okay, so you've made your motion.
And I will second it.
Okay, and we've got a motion and a second. I think the city manager has a question wanting some clarity.
Just some clarification about the time. Are y'all suggesting that possibly a 5:30 meeting next Monday night?
After.
From 5:30 to 6:30, and then pre-council at 6:30?
Can everybody make 5:30?
After?
We were saying after.
At the end of the meeting.
If we get through the meeting by 5:30, that'd be good. The council meeting.
Well, I was going to suggest we start at 5:30, but no, you're suggesting at the end of the meeting.
Y'all want to do 5:30 before?
That's fine.
Redo your motion.
Sorry.
I move that the work session be set for 5:30, the 28th of October, prior to the regular scheduled council meeting.
Okay. And is that a second?
That is for a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We've heard from members of the council. Does the city manager have any comment to make regarding charter reviews from your perspective?
Well, I think you've had a lot of good ideas tonight. I think what the staff will probably try to do is assemble a small packet of information about the process and give you something to think about in advance of this meeting coming up. But certainly from 5:30 to 6:30, an hour, we ought to be able to cover the ground you all desire. So we'll just do some thinking here.
Okay, any further comment or discussion on the motion we have before us? There being none, if you'll register your vote, and that is a unanimous vote in favor. We move now to item 21 regarding boards and commissions. We address first of all resignations of board members. Councilmember Fowler, I believe you have a resignation.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, if you could bear with me just a minute. Have a letter from Mr. William or Bill Worthington, as most people know. Deeply saddens me, but Mr. Worthington has served on our Planning and Zoning Commission prior to it even being called the Planning and Zoning Commission, when it was zoning on demand or zoning on request. He's been a member of this board for 17 years and been chairman for, I believe, 9 of the 17 years. He has been rock solid in efforts to do our comprehensive rezoning, our comprehensive land use plan, our zoning changes that we just went through. Mr. Worthington has had some illnesses in his family. Miss Worthington, he's required to spend a little more time taking a little care of her than it doesn't allow him the opportunity to serve on this commission anymore. He wrote a very nice letter, and it's been a great opportunity for me to not only serve with him but to learn from him. He's a guy knows a great deal about zoning, planning, and cares a great deal about our community. Anyone that spends 17 years on a board and commission, let me guarantee you they care a lot about it. He would like to extend his thanks to our current planning and zoning director and planning and zoning staff. Mr. Pliska and his staff have done, he feels like have been probably the best staff he's worked with the entire time over a 17-year period. He wanted me to take time to express that for him through the letter. And just like to ask, everyone to keep Miss Worthington in their prayers and make sure that, we keep people like this involved. I'd like to also direct staff to make sure that Mr. and Miss Worthington both get an invitation to our boards and commissions dinner this year, and I'd like to do some type of recognition for his years of service.
Okay, you have heard from Councilmember Fowler. I'll call for a vote by the council now to ratify the resignation of Mr. Bill Worthing from the Planning and Zoning Commission. And if you would, gentlemen, register your vote. We have a unanimous vote to accept Mr. Worthington's resignation. Councilmember Markham.
I didn't have my light on, sir. I'm sorry.
That's me.
Oh, okay. I thought they said you had a resignation tonight.
No.
Sorry about that. That's twice in one night. I've overlooked you one time, and I...
Jimmy Gill?
We were going to let him go first.
I do have one. I'm sorry, sir.
He does it.
Okay.
It's been a long night. We have received word of Dr. Jimmy Gill, Broadway Veterinary Clinic, resignation from the Zoning Board of Adjustments as an alternate. Now we'll move for his ratification.
Okay, gentlemen, if you will, register your vote for ratification of the resignation of Dr. Jimmy Gill from the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And that passes by unanimous vote. And now, Councilmember Fowler, back to you. I believe we have an appointment or reappointment to a board or commission.
Yes, sir. In place of Mr. Worthington on our Planning and Zoning Commission, I'd like to ask that the council ratify Mr. Bill Dunn, which is a current alternate on the board. He resides at 4000 Falcon Ridge Drive here in Haltom City, and he's been an alternate and a very diligent alternate since 1999. He served for 3 or 4 years on the Zoning Commission, has done a fantastic job. He's been there, doesn't always get to vote, doesn't always get to participate except in the conversation portion of it, and at times also being a voting member. But I appreciate the fact that he's taken the time and effort to serve on this board, and like to ask that he be ratified as a full member of the zoning commission in place for it.
Okay, we have a request for ratification of the nomination of Mr. Bill Dunn for the Planning and Zoning Commission. If you will register your vote, and that is unanimous vote. That brings us, since item 23 is attendance requirements and all of us are here,
Mr. Mayor.
still have some more to go.
No, I believe Mr. Averett had his light on down there.
I have an appointment and a reappointment, Mayor.
Okay. Let me explain if I could. That oversight, and I apologize for that. I had asked back in pre-council, and if you'd indicated you had an appointment, I failed to write it down, so my apologies. Please proceed.
I have a reappointment to the Park and Recreation Board, Mr. Paul Strong. And also a appointment to the Crime Prevention Board, Mr. Jerry Crowder. His address is 4004 Emerald Oaks.
Okay, do we take those together, or do we need to do them separately?
We can do them either
We
way.
can do them either way.
Okay, we can, okay, you've heard Councilmember Averett's,
Is this both, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, is this both positions? We're
Yes.
voting as both?
Both,
right.
yes.
Unless, would you like to break it out and do
No,
them
sir, that's
separately?
fine, I just wanted
Okay.
clarification.
All right, anyone like to break them out and vote separately? Okay. We're voting on both of those. If you would, register your vote, and that's for ratification on both of those individuals. We come now to move into closed session pursuant to section 551.071, 072, and 074. The council cannot take any action on any item discussed. They're back in closed session, and we'll return to open session for any action to be taken on these subjects. The time is 9:40.
Okay, that's good. We got them now.
Okay, we're reconvened back into regular session. The time is
54.
10:54. We have one item to take action on that's coming out of closed session. Councilmember Jennings.
That's me. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we authorize the city manager to execute the contracts of sale for the two properties discussed in executive session.
Councilmember.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second.
All in favor?
Any discussion? There being none, raise your hand. And the motion carries by unanimous vote. There being no further items on the agenda, we stand adjourned.
Brenda?